If there is any conversation that has traveled through Ghana's political space with more confusion than clarity, it is the hype around Nana Kwame Bediako, better known as Cheddar. Every time his name enters the presidential discussion, the reactions scatter like a crowd hearing the first gunshot at a trouble zone. Some people scream that he's the new hope. Some say he's the fresh wind Ghana needs. And others, especially those who understand how power really works, just shake their heads quietly because they know the truth. The hype merchants will never say with their chest, the truth is not sweet, but it's necessary. And after breaking everything down and tracking the patterns, the conclusion is simple. Ghana is not ready to experiment with a personality brand president, and Nana Kwame Bediako should never be the one leading this republic. When you listen to the praise singers, you will think Ghana is a fashion show and governance is a runway. They speak as if charisma alone builds an economy, as if designer suits can regenerate industries, as if a masked billboard can magically fix a SETI that keeps fainting like a stressed BECE student. But when you strip the PR packaging away and look at the raw data, the behavioral patterns, the inconsistencies, the unanswered questions, the PR stunts, the political flirtations, the money movement mysteries, the sudden rebranding, the ambition without track record, and the shallow policy conversations, you begin to see why handing Ghana to such a leader will be one of the fastest ways to plunge this country into confusion. Ghana has reached a point where we cannot afford to play trial and error with the presidency. This is not a music talent show. This is a national crisis territory where economy, debt, security, infrastructure, and public trust are hanging by the thinnest thread. You cannot put someone in that seat simply because he looks presentable and talks nicely. You need a tested leader, not a public figure who became popular through lifestyle branding and social media visibility. People forget that building personal wealth is not the same as building a nation. A country is not a real estate portfolio. You cannot market a nation the same way you market luxury apartments. Ghana is not a celebrity event you organize at Independence Square. Yet that is exactly how Cheddar's political movement started. Loud, symbolic, theatrical, and heavy on optics, but light on substance. And anybody who understands power knows that when the presentation is louder than the planning, trouble is hiding behind the curtain. When the whole New Force billboard saga started, people thought it was a political masterstroke. In reality, it exposed a very dangerous trait, an obsession with theatrics and a desire to manipulate public curiosity rather than give public clarity. A national movement built on mystery is a national disaster waiting to happen. Transparency is the foundation of leadership. If the beginning is full of coded messages, secret identities, and hidden sponsors, then the middle and the end will be worse. Ghana needs honesty, not magic tricks. Then came the speeches, big vocabulary, powerful voice, inspirational tone. But when you analyze the substance, it becomes clear that the message is mostly atmosphere without architecture. He talks like a motivational speaker at an investment seminar, not like someone who understands the boring, difficult, technical weight of governance. He says things that sound deep but become hollow when you break them down. Ghana doesn't need deep-sounding lines. Ghana needs workable policy, economic recovery structure, national security strategy, industrialization roadmap, energy reform plan, and real administrative competence. Ghana has seen this pattern before. We've seen charismatic figures rise out of nowhere, gain attention, hype, and then disappear when reality demands results. This time, the stakes are too high. You can't play country management like a personal project. You can't run a state like a brand campaign. Ghana is not a billboard. Ghana is a fragile economy with millions of people depending on the smallest policy change. One wrong decision can cost the nation billions, collapse industries, and destroy livelihoods. The first major red flag about Cheddar is the mysterious structure of his wealth. This is Ghana, a country where people don't forget sudden riches. When someone becomes wealthy, people automatically ask, what did you build? Who did you employ? What industry did you transform? What problem did you solve? In Cheddar's case, the answers are always vague. Some say real estate, some say imports, some say investments, some say international connections. But when you look for the big companies he built, the industries he revolutionized, or the large-scale businesses under his name that employ thousands, you won't find them. That alone is a national red flag. Ghana cannot hand the presidency to someone whose economic foundations lack public clarity. Transparency is part of leadership. If people don't understand your business, how can they trust your presidency? Real presidents have track records, they have measurable footprints, they have verifiable impact. But in this case, the public knows the fashion, the cars, the mansions, the showmanship, and the philanthropy, but not the core business that generated the wealth. That is a recipe for national instability because secrecy and leadership can never coexist peacefully. Then comes the second red flag, the constant rebranding. First, he was Freedom Jacob Caesar. Then he was Nana Kwame Bediako, the real estate developer. Then he was Cheddar, the mogul. Then he was the Pan-African savior. Then he was the new force leader. People who reinvent themselves too often for public consumption usually lack a stable leadership identity. A leader must have consistency. Ghana cannot afford a president who changes identity like a marketing strategy. Look at serious presidents globally. They don't rebrand every few years. They build one strong, credible identity. Consistency builds trust. Constant transformation builds suspicion. Another worrying issue is his relationship with political figures. Over the years, he has been linked publicly with various politicians across parties, taking pictures, attending events, praising some, aligning with others. That in itself is not a crime. But when you see someone who switches circles easily depending on the season, you must understand that such a person is not driven by conviction but by strategic positioning. A president needs solid principles, not flexible alliances designed for maintaining personal influence. Ghana has suffered enough from leaders who chase influence instead of national development. You cannot put someone in power who treats politics like a networking opportunity. Governance is not about being seen with the right people. It is about making the hard decisions that these same people will hate. Another major factor that makes Cheddar unsuitable for Ghana's presidency is his lack of administrative and public sector experience. Leadership at the national level is not the same as leadership in the private sector. Running your own business where you give the orders and everyone obeys is completely different from running a democratic state, where you must manage parliament, ministries, security agencies, civil servants, and international obligations. A president must understand how laws work, how the Constitution restricts power, how bureaucracy slows down decisions, how global forces shape national outcomes, and how complex institutions operate. This is why experienced leaders often struggle. So imagine handing the job to someone with no experience in public administration. Running a country is not about making motivational speeches or organizing symbolic events. It is about navigating debt, restructuring negotiations, IMF conditions, fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade agreements, national security threats, food security, energy crises, unemployment problems, and large-scale infrastructure planning. These things cannot be learned on the job. If Ghana elects a beginner, Ghana becomes a training ground. There is also the issue of his obsession with optics. A president must value results more than appearance. But Cheddar's entire rise has been built on appearance. He understands public psychology. He knows how to create excitement. He knows how to pull a crowd. He knows how to use symbolism to influence perception. The problem is that his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. He is driven by image. And a president who prioritizes appearance over substance would destroy a nation. Ghana doesn't need a president who treats governance like a movie set. We need someone who understands that real development is often boring, technical, and slow. You don't build factories with inspirational quotes. You don't reduce inflation with charisma. You don't stabilize the city with fashion. You don't fix dump sore with symbolism. You don't fight corruption with speeches. Another reason Cheddar should never lead Ghana is the lack of clear policies. After all the speeches, interviews, and appearances, when you ask for specific plans, you get vague answers. You hear broad goals like empowering the youth, transforming Africa, creating opportunities, building a stronger economy, but no detailed breakdown of how these things will be done. That is the language of a motivational speaker, not a president. Policies require hard numbers, timelines, mechanisms, and measurable outcomes. Vision without execution is hallucination. Ghana cannot elect a dreamer who has not demonstrated real administrative competence. Another rising concern among political analysts is his potential influence from external actors. When someone rises too fast, gains too much visibility, and suddenly begins to position themselves for power without a clear explanation of who backs them, you must ask the uncomfortable question. Who is sponsoring the ambition behind the scenes? Politics is expensive. Running a nationwide political campaign requires millions. Where is that money coming from? Who are the quiet influences behind him? What do they want in return? Ghana has suffered long enough from leaders captured by private interests. The country cannot afford another one. Additionally, his sudden interest in politics raises eyebrows. Leadership should be a long-term service commitment, not a last-minute lifestyle upgrade. A serious presidential candidate built political roots over decades, not months. You cannot appear overnight and expect the nation to hand you the steering wheel. Another danger is the cult-like fan base forming around him. A country must never elect a leader based on hype, personality, worship, or emotional excitement. Those things end in regret. Ghana needs a leader whose competence, not charisma, speaks for him. Then there is the issue of maturity. A president must be calm, stable, and grounded. When you examine Cheddar's public posture, you see a man who enjoys attention a bit too much. Presidents must avoid drama, but his entire brand thrives on drama, dramatic billboards, dramatic appearances, dramatic speeches. Governance is not drama. Governance is discipline. Ghana cannot afford a president who gets carried away by theatrics. His lack of political experience also means he won't know how to manage political pressure. Ghana's political environment is brutal. Presidents face insults, attacks, criticism, scandals, and sabotage. A leader must withstand these pressures without losing focus. But someone whose brand is built on public admiration will struggle when the same public begins to criticize him. If your identity depends on applause, you will collapse when the applause stops and Ghana's presidency comes with more insults than applause. Political leadership also requires understanding national history, political dynamics, ethnic balancing, cultural sensitivities, and diplomatic navigation. These are not areas Cheddar has demonstrated mastery in. Ghana cannot be handed to someone who still sees Africa like a motivational concept rather than a complex geopolitical ecosystem. Another concern is that Cheddar has not built any large-scale national project before. His philanthropy is admirable, but charity is not governance. Giving back to society is different from running society. Charity can be emotional. Governance must be rational. Charity is optional. Governance is mandatory. Charity can be done with personal money. Governance must be done with taxpayer money, global loans, and national resources. The stakes are different. There is also the fear that his presidency will be dominated by friends, socialites, influencers, and untested loyalists instead of competent technocrats. Ghana cannot risk that. We need leaders surrounded by experts, not hype. The country is in deep crisis. Only strong institutions and experienced administrators can save it, not a circle of lifestyle-driven associates. Furthermore, his tendency to avoid difficult political questions shows a lack of readiness. Anytime he is asked specific governance questions, he diverts into inspirational speeches instead of giving clear answers. That is a sign of someone who has not done the homework. Ghana's problems are too deep for poetic speeches. We need grounded solutions. Another issue is his global worldview. He speaks often about Africa rising and Ghana becoming the hub of something grand. But his ideas often sound utopian rather than practical. He focuses on big dreams instead of step-by-step practical solutions. Ghana does not need a dream architect. Ghana needs a problem solver. The presidency is a position that demands humility. Yet, Cheddar's brand is built on extravagance, luxury, and public admiration. Leaders who adore glamour often make bad presidents because they struggle to adapt to the gritty, harsh, ugly realities of governance. You cannot be president if you cannot tolerate boredom, criticism, and sacrifice. His brand has not shown that side. Another critical point is that Ghana needs a president with a deep understanding of economics. Not just wealth creation, but macroeconomics, fiscal policy, monetary systems, international finance, and national budgeting. Running a private business cannot teach you how to run a national economy. Ghana needs someone with proven understanding of economic structure, not someone who made personal wealth through unclear means. Lastly, Ghana needs stability, not experimentation. Cheddar represents a political experiment, something new, untested, and unpredictable. Ghanaians are suffering already. This is not the right time to gamble the future of the nation on an unknown quantity. In conclusion, The problem is not that Cheddar is a bad person. The issue is that the presidency is not a playground for branding personalities. Ghana needs structure, not symbolism. Competence, not charisma. Stability, not experimentation. Policies, not theatrics. Track record, not mystery. Depth, not fashion. Substance, not slogans. Ghana needs a president prepared for the fire, not someone practicing with smoke. Nana Kwame Bediako is talented, ambitious, charismatic, and influential, but the presidency requires more than those things. Ghana cannot afford to hand the nation to someone whose leadership identity, business clarity, policy depth, and administrative competence are still unclear. This is why, in the blunt, unapologetic, unfiltered style of Wicked Blogger Ghana, the message must be said plainly. Nana Kwame Bediako should never be president, not because he is evil, but because Ghana is too fragile, too complicated, too pressured, and too economically wounded to be handed to an untested brand leader whose biggest strength is optics, not governance. Ghana needs more than hype. Ghana needs survival. And survival demands experience, not experimentation.